Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. This is Thursday, September 26th, episode 137. Chuck McTinnick, Matt Roy. Chuck, what's going on?
Not much. It's a morning, but it feels like an afternoon. So that is good. I've already had my lunch. It's 10 a.m.
You've had your lunch. I haven't had my breakfast yet. I literally have not eaten breakfast. I have 3 meals sitting on our fridge over there that I just have not even touched.
I would imagine that's a problem for as big a boy as you are, that you must have fuel all the time.
Well, I'm trying to cut down
keep
on
that
everything.
frame going.
And so it's like I'm only, my diet is crazy right now. But even tonight when we do TNL, I am not going to have anything on the sideline. No Taco Cabana for me tonight.
Oh, more for us in the booth with Don and I.
Yeah, I'm going to have to run it up there to you guys again. Gus, thankfully, isn't that bad, though. So
yes.
Before we get started, I want to remind everyone, subscribe to the YouTube channel, both News 4 and Fox SA. If you're so inclined, download, rate, review the podcast. Helps us out a lot on the numbers and whatnot. Lets us keep doing what we love to do, which is talk about sports on Mondays and Thursdays. What do you look? Whatnot. We got a lot to get into today. The Cowboys playing tonight in the Meadowlands. 3 days rest. The first time in Cowboys history they are on the road on 3 days rest, which is weird kind of scheduling snafu. It is,
but it's weird that that's the first time that's ever happened in franchise history.
It's also weird because it's happened to every other team in the league at least 6 times. And it's never happened to the Cowboys.
Oh, the power of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Playing at home on a Thursday during Thanksgiving.
Yeah, pretty odd. Also, some big news out of college this week on a couple of fronts. One, UTSA staying in the AAC, not moving to the Pac-12. Was that a good move or bad move? Plus, a lot of controversy in Las Vegas, and not for the reason you might think. Actually, it is for the reason you might think. It's about money. UNLV and their now former quarterback, Matthew Sluka, having quite the controversy over NIL. This is the wild, wild west that we live in as the NIL era is upon us. So let's get to some trivia first before we get to Cowboys Giants. In honor of the Rangers stinking and the Diamondbacks possibly also missing the playoffs, my trivia question for you today, Chuck, is when's the last time both World Series participants from the previous year missed the playoffs in the following season? When is the last time both World Series participants the previous year missed the playoffs in the following season? Anything come to mind right away?
Absolutely nothing came to mind, but full disclosure, and we'll see how good the internet is. When you walked out of the room and I saw the question, I decided to cheat and look it up.
Oh, you bastard. Well, let's just get it done with now.
Well, I don't even know if I'm right because the first thing that popped up was something on Reddit. So,
all right, well, tell me what.
So
you
I
found.
did. I read it, but I don't know that it's right.
You cheated.
I did.
What a cheater!
Hey, at least it was full disclosure. It's
I
not
mean,
like I came out and said what I'm going to say, and then you think I'm a wizard.
That's
or
what
something.
Don would have done.
Right.
Don would have totally played it off like, yeah, I know this. Not knowing it. All right, well then give me what is it then? What did you read on
Tigers
Reddit?
Cardinals 07?
That is true.
Okay.
That is true. Tigers and Cardinals World Series.
I would have never been able to guess that.
In 2006, the Cardinals beat the Tigers 4-1. Neither team made the playoffs in 2007, and it's kind of similar to this year because the Cardinals finished 78 and 84, third place in the NL Central, which the Astros were actually in at that time. And that might be what the Rangers finish with. That's still a possibility for their final record, 78 and 84, I believe. And then the Tigers went 88 and 76, missed the playoff by 6 games, but were the first team out. So this would also be kind of weird for the for the Rangers and the D-backs because there's so many more wild card teams now. You have 2 more wild cards in each division or in each league now. So it would be kind of a feat and a half for them to miss. So.
Well, I mean, as we've well documented around here, I mean, the injuries have really been, obviously for them, insurmountable. That's what makes the Astros run really 2 years in a row with all these injuries that much more fascinating.
All right, let's get to the Cowboys here. So the Cowboys at the Giants tonight. Cowboys are 6-point favorites, 7:15 on Amazon Prime. It is quite literally a prime time game, pun intended. Let's hear from the Cowboys first. This is Brandon Cooks and Micah Parsons on kind of having their backs against the wall on this Thursday night game.
3 games in, but we can't keep coming back here sitting like we need to fix it. Now's the time, absolutely. And no better chance with a short week in front of us to go out there and play our brand of football and fix the things that we're talking about.
You got to figure it out. I'd rather get knocked in the head now because when you fail, what do? You got to get back up. And I think that's going to create a great locker room environment, great team environment, right? We failed. Okay, we know what that feels like. We know, like, you can only get up. It's only up from here, right? So when I said we're low, where do you go from when you're at the bottom? You climb. But you got to be willing to climb.
Can they climb, Chuck?
Well, that's the hope, right? And anything, even one step ahead of where they were the last 2 weeks, especially on defense, would be good. You just get the feeling, though, that this is going to be a shootout tonight, right? Or it's going to have to be in order for the Cowboys to win. Hopefully that's not the case. Maybe they're able to flip the script. But, what I'm having a hard time really kind of coming to grips with, Matt, is that, the first week, I saw them with my own two eyes, and they were damn good on defense that first week. I mean, really, really good. I mean, talking about, D-Law and Michael and 13 all playing on the other end of the line the entire game. I mean, schematically, everything looked great. And to think that it's gone this far south, I mean, I there's no way I would have seen it coming. I don't care if you'd have told me that any one of those guys was banged up, nicked up, not playing well, they would have been able to overcome some of that. And now I'm thinking, well, I just don't know maybe how much of this is, maybe Cleveland's not as good as the other two teams that they face. I don't know. I think we're going to find out a lot tonight, one way or the other.
Sorry, Bob.
Second in offense.
What'd you say?
The Browns are at the bottom of the league for offense.
Well, yeah, aren't they like number one in sacks too? Because they honestly just don't have an O-line right now.
They are. I mean, they made the Cowboys look better than they are.
They're down to like one starter on the O-line, right?
That has to be fair at this point.
I think only the right tackles.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that the Cowboys took advantage of their schedule there? I think. I mean, I think it's starting to be clear that meant a lot more, or that showed us a lot more about the Cowboys, or about the Browns, excuse me, than the Cowboys.
Yeah, well, we didn't know that at the time, and there's a reason why.
But now we see it in hindsight.
Well, I mean, you can make the argument too then that the reason why Cleveland's so bad is because they faced the Cowboys defense, at least in week 1.
I don't know about that. The Cowboys, for me, this is their season rides on tonight. And there's no such thing as a must-win game in September, but I think this might be a must-win game in September. If you don't win this game, you go and you start the real meat of your schedule. You play the Lions coming up, you play the Eagles coming up, you play the Niners coming up. You play a lot of tough teams that you're going to have to win games against. And if you don't win those games, then you're going to be a wild card team, possibly. And we all see how the Cowboys operate in the playoffs. You need to kind of be at home for that. The good thing they have going for them is their last 10 games against the Giants, they've been pretty much absolutely dominant. 9-1 against the Giants in the last 10 games. Last loss coming in 2021, I believe his last game of the season, January 3rd, 23-19. But in their 9 wins, they're winning by an average of 18.4 points, including, I think, 34 last year and 40 last year. The only they only have one win by less than one touchdown. Dak Prescott 12-2 straight up against the Giants. I mean, they just hammer, meet, nail. I mean, they completely destroy the Giants, and this seems like one of those kind of get right games, if you want to call it that. If they don't get right, then they're going to completely get wrong on this season.
I'm with you in a lot of regards. I mean, if you were going to pick a team that you needed to get right against, or you'd have the easiest time getting right, then the Giants, I think, would come to mind for every Cowboy fan. I don't know that it's a must win, obviously. And to your point, is there such a thing in week 4? Probably not. But it sure does feel like it in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And so let's say if they lose, but tonight, like if they lose tonight 24-21 and the defense makes some plays or the defense just shows up, quite frankly, because again, what we've seen the last 2 weeks just doesn't even meet the smell test at any level in the NFL at any time. The fact that you could have 2 straight games where the other team went down the field and scored on you every single time like that and made it look easy in the process, whether it was a big play or ball control, like there's been no resistance. And that just doesn't make any sense at this level when all these teams, the salary cap, the way the rules are, everybody's built to have it's a 50-50 game. It's supposed to be every single week for the most part. So if they show some signs of improvement, there's something you can hang your hat on. But if a loss tonight looks like what it's looked like the last 2 weeks where, the offense maybe not clicking, but plays okay, And then,
The
but if the
defense
defense is
horrible.
this bad again, then I might be on the bandwagon like, okay, until I see something, I'm going to go with this is a lost season. And you better start thinking about what is this going to look like next year?
The Cowboys are on the verge of their season being completely lost. Completely lost. If you don't win tonight, you're on the road against the Steelers next week. You're home to the Lions after that. Then you get a bye. Then you're at the 49ers. We know they're going to lose that game because they've shown us time and time again they can't beat the 49ers. Then you're at the Falcons. That's not an easy game. Home to the Eagles. That's not an easy game. Home to the Texans. That's not an easy game. They're staring 3-9 in the face if they lose this game. Like, their season can completely get away from them. Luckily, you're 9-1 against the Giants in the last 10. You've you've won by an average of 18.5 points.
Dak owns them.
You need that performance tonight if you want any semblance of saving your season.
Yeah, I just hope that, again, the way they played against the Giants in the Dak era, he lost his first 2 games against them, and then he's won a gazillion in a row, that you'll have those kinds of feelings going into that game, because it's been a rough week for these guys getting beat up. And I know there's no better team to deal with this week to week than they are, but I just find it fascinating too, right? The Texans, we're all ready to anoint them after 2 weeks. They go into Minnesota and get crushed on both sides of the ball. And yet there's still not a bad feeling about them coming off a really terrible defeat. And yet here we are with the Cowboys, where it is, I just think it's fascinating, where we are in terms of how we look at these two teams, and rightfully so. I mean, if you were to ask yourself, who's more apt to bounce back from a week 3 loss, Houston or Dallas, I don't know one of us that would say it wouldn't be the Texans.
Well, to that point, I think it's also like we came in with a sense of optimism about the Texans this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
We came in with a sense of pessimism about the Cowboys. We needed the Cowboys to prove it to us that this roster was actually going to be successful in the moves that they made and did not make, more aptly, did not make. We needed them to prove that those were the right moves or non-moves to make. They haven't done that at all over the last 2 weeks at the very least. The Texans, however, have shown us glimpses of being the team that we all think that they can be. They're 2-1 still. They have their whole season in front of them. Being 2-1 and 1-2 really isn't a huge difference at this point in the season, but the way that they've played has been significantly different.
Yes, and I think, we have to give the Cowboys some grace on the defensive side. I mean, hard not to with the way they performed in week 1, but there are a lot of new guys playing. It is a new scheme. It was week 3, week 2. Let's just see if we see some growth tonight.
A little concerned as well about the injuries. Kalen Carson, doubtful for tonight. Marquise Bell, doubtful for tonight. Already out Deron Bland. Luckily, you're not facing the best passing attack in the world. You're playing Daniel Jones and you're playing Malik Neighbors, who is just a freaking stud.
Sure looks like
good
it.
God.
Yeah.
I look like an idiot for trading him week 2 in fantasy, but whatever. Yeah, don't ask.
It's a long season.
Don't ask.
It's a long season.
I really needed a running back, and so I traded Malik Neighbors. It wasn't a good look.
You're a good owner, but a bad head coach.
Yeah. So I traded Malik Neighbors and Malik Neighbors and one other no-name person for Zach Moss and DJ Moore. So it wasn't a bad trade. Just Malik Neighbors looks like the second coming of Jesus right now on a football field. So he's not making that trade look very good for me. But also the Giants, to that point, have some injuries as well. They're missing Adoree Jackson. They're going to be missing Andrew Phillips. So to your shootout point, it's got the potential for this to be a 35-27 kind of game.
I think the Cowboys are probably hoping so in that regard. I mean, if you're waiting for your defense to kind of find itself, then it would be helpful if you could get out in front, score first, maybe give them an opportunity to play with their ears pinned back a little bit. I think the big thing too, though, is yes, losing those 2 DBs for the Cowboys is going to hurt. Obviously it's going to hurt the Giants losing their 2 DBs, but 7 and 2, is it? I'm trying to think of what Jordan Lewis's number. He's 2, right? Is he 2? I should stop calling them by their number and just
say Jordan Lewis.
Right. So, but those guys graded out very, very well in the last game, despite, I know everybody sees the last play that wasn't made by 7 there on the third down play, but I don't know. I think that game last week, that could have been a lot worse had the Ravens not taken their foot off the gas.
I'll go ahead and make my prediction now. I think the Cowboys win the game. I think they cover. The cover is, I believe it went down to 5.5. It's probably 6, somewhere around there. I believe they do that, but I also believe that Trayvon Diggs will be watching Malik Neighbors from behind for one of these plays, and that Malik Neighbors is going to be running wide open for a touchdown as Trayvon Diggs goes for an interception, gets burned, or just gets burned outright.
I don't know, man. I'll take 7 on my team any day of the week. I mean, a guy like that turns you over at the rate that he does, there are not many like him. And, hopefully they get Deron Bland soon back, and then think about how good that back end's going to look.
So Cowboys win?
Man, I really don't know. After watching the last 2 weeks where if I wasn't at work, there's no way I would have watched the second half of those ball games. It's like, if you're not ready to go, well, why should I be ready to go? I'll go cut my grass or do something.
If I didn't bet on the game, I wouldn't have watched the second half of those games.
Well, there you go. I mean, I think just like a lot of people that are, watching sports because they can gamble quarter to quarter, right?
Yeah.
Or play to play.
Bob?
We got a couple comments. Mike says the Cowboys are going to win by an Aubrey field goal, a 58-yarder.
What about a 70? Let's go with a 70-yarder.
That's a very specific prediction.
Yes.
And then a guy we see in the chat and watching quite a bit, Robert Smith. Shout out to Robert.
Shout out Robert Smith.
He says, I'm thinking Diggs gets 2 picks tonight.
It could happen. I mean, Daniel Jones has that propensity to turn the ball over. But I think that, like I said, I think the Cowboys win. I think they cover. I don't think it's particularly close. The only way that I could see the Giants covering is if it's like a backdoor cover. They're up by 13 to get a garbage time touchdown, whatever. But Daniel Jones could blow up, or he could implode. He could blow up in a good way and throw it to Malik Neighbors 10 times and do the whole thing, or he could implode and throw 2 pick sixes. You just don't know.
Yeah, I've seen him make some throws where you go, wow, this guy is going to be really something good when he figures it out. And then you're right. There are times, but it's so hard to play that position at any level, much less at the NFL level for sure.
All right, let's move on. We're already done with trivia because Chuck cheated. So let's move on to UTSA staying in the AAC.
Is it cheating if it's full disclosure that you cheated?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. If you admit that you cheated, you still cheated.
I guess that's true.
Like, what was the baseball player who admitted that he cheated years ago?
There's been some that have done the mea culpas.
Wasn't it Jose Canseco? He still cheated, but he profited off it. He wrote a book. So, anyway.
Yes.
UTSA staying in the AAC. As always, remember, if you need to, or if you want to follow our YouTube channel and whatnot, News 4, Fox 29 on YouTube, download, rate, review the podcast and whatnot. Let's get to UTSA. UTSA staying in the American, revitalizing and kind of not revitalizing the Pac-12, stopping the advances of the other team. Of the other conference, Pac-12 commissioner said last week they were looking to hit a home run, not a single. Coach Traylor alluded to conversations, not really alluded, he even said it outright, that there was conversations being had between President Amy and Lisa Campos in the background. Are you surprised that all UTSA is staying in the AAC?
I don't know that I would have been surprised either way, to be honest with you, Matt. I don't know that I really particularly get too much into, it doesn't really interest me that much, all these conference jumping and everything. It's just let me know when the games are in the fall. I mean, it's hard for me to kind of keep up with it, but I'm glad they're staying in that. I like this AAC league. I like that there are Texas schools in this league. You're just starting to learn some of these other places that they're having to go and some of these teams that they're having to play when they go east. And I really wasn't looking forward to, just if I'm being honest, playing a bunch of Mountain West teams and then the travel and think of the cost that's going to be involved with all that. I mean, would we have gotten used to it? Of course. I mean, I really didn't want to see, UTSA leave the first time and then go to the AAC, but you get used to it. But yeah, let me warm up to the idea that you can have a rival that maybe isn't in your state or, things like that. I think that's what interests me is the matchups every week. And if it's a new team, my view of college football, I know this is going to break your heart, but probably doesn't surprise you. I mean, anything west of UTEP, I really don't pay that much attention to anyway. So,
all right, his mic's muted.
So, it's too much to keep up with. And so if they'd have moved, of course, we'd have gotten used to it. But for my own sanity, I'm glad they're staying put.
There's a couple things here. The realignment in general is just exhausting because I'm never going to get used to Stanford playing Syracuse in an ACC conference matchup. But that's kind of besides the point. All of this hinged on money, and as it always does. According to an ESPN article, exit fees from the AAC were looming as a big factor. SMU paid $25 million to leave under a 27-month window, factoring in the revenue that was lost. That would have projected to $27.5 million for Tulane, Memphis, UTSA, and USF to leave. So obviously that's not acceptable because that's more than UTSA has, considerably more. They also said the biggest factor working against the Pac-12 in luring the high-profile AAC programs was that it couldn't guarantee a set monetary amount. Right now, I believe Tulane, Memphis, the big AAC schools, not UTSA, make $9 million a year due to revenue sharing. Pac-12 might have been $12, $13 million, which is obviously a boost, but they couldn't guarantee that because they don't know what the conference is going to look like. So it was the uncertainty for all of those schools that they were just like, let's play it safe and be here in the AAC. Do I think that it would have been a good move for UTSA? I do, because the Pac-12, even though it's not what its previous lore was, the previous iteration, the Conference of Champions, and full disclosure, I have a soft spot in my heart for the Pac-12 because my sister went to USC. I'm an Arizona State guy, so I love the Pac-12 and its previous iteration, but obviously it's not what it used to be. And so do I want to see a revitalization of the Pac-12? Yes. Was it the best move for UTSA? Probably not. I have a feeling that they're going to stay in the AAC till a Big 12 or something opens up, because the Big 12 is the next one on the chopping block. Obviously, the ACC, a lot of teams want to leave there, but they'll be fine. The Big 12 is the next one on the chopping block. The Big 12 almost went away years ago, and instead the Pac-12 took its place.
Right.
So if this was the Big 12 calling instead of the Pac-12, I think that this would be a completely different conversation.
100%.
Because of the prominence of the conference still. But an upstart program like UTSA going to now an upstart league like the Pac-12, those two things just don't mix.
Yeah, I would have been on board too. And, as we were spitballing, scenarios, and it doesn't look like the Pac-12 was interested, but, if you could get like Texas State.
Yeah, I like
and
Texas State.
UTSA.
Pull the Sun Belt teams.
Yes, and something that would make something called the Pacific whatever conference feel more Texas-y.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, what the AAC has done a very good job in. That feels to me, when you look up and you can see Texas schools like Rice and North Texas in there, and, gives me a better feel that I'm in a regional conference. I don't want my school. I take that back. Like if I was at A&M or Texas and, the SEC came calling, then I don't mind joining something that looks less than a regional,
right?
Southeast, quote unquote. But I don't know.
We don't know what's happening in the world of college football in general right now. I mean, there's so much flux going on, and the story we're going to get to here in a second even provides that a microcosm into what's going on into college athletics even more. I mean, realignment's going to happen almost every year. You're going to get some sort of school saying we're leaving this conference for this conference every offseason now. I mean, Utah State is now the 7th team that's going to join the Pac-12. Where's the Mountain West going to go? They have to now join another league, or they have to get new teams in their league, which means there's going to be more reshuffling. So for UTSA, it's a matter of time before they leave the AAC and they go to another conference, especially if Jeff continues what he's done here. If they bottom out and they end up 4-8 every year, then no one's going to want them. But if Jeff stays and he continues his 10-2 reigns, or his 8-4s, or his 12-1s, or however many games they can win, they will continue to get these calls, and eventually they're going to accept some sort of offer. It's just a matter of time.
I mean, we've talked about this being the wild, wild west forever. I don't even know where you begin to put how do you get a hold of everything that's going on? Do you have to have a salary cap? Would it behoove not only having a salary cap, but for NIL money, everybody gets paid the same, so you're not creating potential dissension in a locker room? I mean, there's just so many things to unpack with all of this stuff that's going on. NIL, conference changing, you name it. I don't know that I got the bandwidth for it anymore. I think a lot of people, Nick Saban pointing to that. It's like, I don't know that I can keep up with this and what's going on, but there's so much money to be made in college football. I mean, it's the second biggest sports entity in the United States, right behind the NFL.
It's amateur sports, all right?
Yes. How can we forget?
Let's get to the UNLV controversy here. So something that I think we all saw coming, not this particular case, but like these sorts of controversies, finally reared its ugly head this week. So for those who haven't heard of it, let me just sum this up and as plainly as I can. Matthew Sluka is the starting quarterback over at UNLV. He transferred in this offseason from Holy Cross. He was allegedly promised verbally $100,000 in NIL money from assistant coach and offensive coordinator Brendan Marion. Sluka's agent never got this in writing, never got a payment up front, only receiving a $3,000 stipend for moving costs. Now, 3 games in, 3-0, they've beat Houston, they beat Kansas. Sluka's side is saying that they were lied to. The NIL collective went back on the deal. They never got any of the money that they were verbally promised. UNLV saying they never did that, and that UNLV started 3-0. Sluka's agent went to the NIL collective and started making monetary demands, and they said threats, in order to continue to play. Putting it plainly, just like in that movie with Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell, get your brooms out because it's a mess. This whole thing is a freaking mess. And it just shows you kind of what world we live in now. This would never have happened years ago. It's over money, at least. It didn't happen over money to the extent that we know, or to the extent that we see it happening now. Like maybe, someone gets wronged by a coach and they redshirt that season and they transfer out. That happens all the time. But to see the ugliness of college football right now on full display when you have these, 20-year-old kids just trying to compete. I mean, we don't know who's right and who's wrong in this situation, but it's
possible
just ugly.
that both are, there's some truth on both sides,
Correct, right?
I mean, if the kid went from Holy Cross to UNLV, he was promised probably something, right? And given the going rate for really good quarterbacks in the country, I mean, it's a lot more than 100.
It's feasible that $100,000 could have been promised to him. It's feasible, 100%. From an athlete's perspective, someone who played college athletics, I know it wasn't at this level, it was at the Division II level, but still, from an athlete's perspective, there's no amount of money that you could have promised me and reneged on that I would have quit. Especially if I'm 3-0. Like, it's not about the 3-0. It's not about the money. It's about the guys in the locker room. Like, there's no coach. There's nothing that a coach could have done to me to where I would have, I don't want to say nothing. There's very few things that a coach could have done to me where I would have said, F you guys, I'm leaving. I'm sorry. Sorry about all my brothers in the locker room. Sorry for the 100 guys in there that I'm disappointing now, but it's about me. That's not why you play team sports. That's not why football is the greatest team game in the world, because you don't do that. It's not a me sport. And that's what I hate about NIL now, is it's making it me.
Right. But that's the problem between, comparing eras too in this particular case, because if money had been a part of the equation, then the money starts doing different things to people. And if you're talking about a 17 or 18-year-old kid with this money, I mean, I shudder to think what I would have been doing at that age with that much money in my back pocket. And I've had some conversations with pro athletes that were going through the NIL thing the first time, and they talked about how weird that was. Like, all of a sudden you went from having nothing to having all of it. And it does. I mean, that would be hard for an adult to have to process, or somebody who's, my frontal lobe's still a work in progress. I don't know how these kids are actually having to do it, but so, the dynamic might have been different when you were playing. If there was money on the table and all of a sudden somebody's in your ear going, gee, Matt, you're a hell of a ball player. And yeah, your team's 3-0, but you're only making 10,000 here. Maybe I can get you 30,000 down the street.
But you have to
Why are you going to go put? Yeah. Well, so what? If you're still getting paid, who cares? I mean, at some point, that's going to factor. It's going to weigh on your decision to whether play or to not to play. Look, I don't want to defend this kid because I know exactly what you're saying, and that's in my heart too. It's like, I can't believe you would duke out on your guys like this when you've got, there's going to be money to be made. The other side of it is, if you were promised something and they didn't deliver, well then, verbally or written, to me, it's like, if you were promised, then they should deliver. So we have to at least consider that that's a possibility as well. And then beyond that too, if you're this kid and you have a skill set and you've guided your team into the top 25, again, I'm not saying that I would have done this, but if you've already got an agent, somebody is thinking about these things. Like, your self-preservation, you're going to make more money playing college football than you're going to make when you get your degree and get out and find a job. So in these games, there's only 10 or 12 of them every single year, and you can get hurt, and it can be done in a twinkling of an eye. I mean, again, when you put the money factor into this, and it's more than just going to college for free, this is exactly what you're going to get, and it's going to get a lot worse.
Matt Sluka's agent also freaking sucks. Who doesn't get a contract? And who
Right.
doesn't get
or
he's
doesn't get more money, right?
He's horrible.
I mean, Frank Harris got $1 million offer to go to Oregon last year before he played here, and he didn't go because it wasn't about the money here, and he knew he was making good money here, but he knew he wasn't going to leave his guys. But guys like Frank Harris are a dime a dozen. I can't say
Frank Harris and Matt Sluka's situations are obviously different.
100%, but I'm not saying, like, if I know me, if I had been Frank Harris and had that opportunity, I would have said, I love you, UTSA. Thank you for all you've done for me, but I'm going to be an Oregon Duck. See you later.
Well, this would have been like if Frank went to Oregon for $1 million offer and they said, no, we're not going to give you $1 million, and we're going to give you
correct
$20,000 instead. And then he redshirts and is like, what the
right?
Like, what happened?
Of course.
What about you, Bob?
Well, the businessman is in the house. Tom Guerrero is.
Hey, Tom G.
Tommy.
And he said 100% it's about the money. We didn't have these issues before. Kids were getting paid. What happened about education first? That's quaint, isn't it?
Yes, right.
All right. Education was never first.
Yeah. It's another professional football league is what it is. And if you get the degree, because I shouldn't say some, almost all of these kids are going to use their time wisely and work towards getting their degree. More than likely, because of the red shirt year, most of them are going to end up with degrees. And so, I don't want to make it sound like everybody's out there grabbing money. Most of these guys, football's using them. They're using football too, to the best of their abilities and to whatever advantages that they're being given. I mean, as anybody that's put a kid through college, like, to me, if somebody would have given one of my kids a free ride, what a blessing that is. Not only for the kid, obviously, but for the parent that's trying to get their kid in and out. And now to think that they're getting that blessing and all this money is like, man, the world really has changed.
I mean, as someone who got their first 2 degrees for free, that was enough for me. Like, I wasn't the greatest player in the world. Obviously, I played at a Division II school and was never going anywhere past that. But it was like, that was enough for me, and being part of the team was enough for me. Playing the amount that I did was enough for me because that's what my team needed from me. But for me, it's always about team first. And now that the players are being put first and the players are putting themselves above the team, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Right.
No matter what amount of money it is. Like, if it's $100,000, if it's $1 million, you couldn't have paid me to leave the team.
Well said. I think
that's just me, and I don't want to blame Sluka because I don't know the whole story here with the situation, and there's 2 sides in this war of words. And I will always side with the player if this comes out. But still, no matter what the amount of money was, he should have stayed with the team and played. I don't care if they wronged you or what, because your teammates didn't wrong you.
Correct.
Why are you punishing them? So, and then you have the running back also leaving. And now you have a D end at USC leaving and redshirting and entering the transfer portal. It's just a tidal wave of shit.
What about the other side of the equation? Do you think that his decision to leave is going to affect what other teams are going to offer him, like next year?
It could.
No, I don't.
But it only takes one,
Yeah.
right? For every coach who goes, you know what? I don't like what you did to your team. I don't want a guy like that on my team. There's going to be one that needs a quarterback. That's the way it works.
The crappy thing here is that this all falls in the NCAA anyway. They need more oversight with this. They have this whole antitrust lawsuit going on right now, and hopefully that'll cut out some of the middlemen, because how this all works right now is NIL collectives end up paying the athlete, not the schools. So if they win this antitrust lawsuit, then at least schools can just make direct payments to the students, and you can have some sort of contract. You can have some sort of oversight in this. So at least it's not the wild, wild west and everybody is just taking money from everybody. Like, I'm going to go take money from April and Sierra down the road, not to smite April or anything like that, just using her as an example. Like, I don't want,
yes,
sorry.
April, if you have more money, we'll be more than happy to take some of your money.
Should say sneakers and cleats down there by April and Sierra.
Yes.
Sorry, I shouldn't have.
We owe her a debt of gratitude. Right? She spent so much money around here. We should all be buying our cars from April.
Jordan,
for sure.
Jordan and I did. Anyway.
And you're off the hook. You're good.
Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up, but I was using that as an example.
We know
of like, you need some sort of oversight in this, and the fact that there's no oversight leads to these kinds of situations, and it sucks. It's a bad look for college football. It's a bad look for the athletes. It's a bad look for the schools, and it makes everyone question what the ethics and what the legalities are behind everything.
Dude, you probably are tired of me hearing talking about this.
Probably.
But when I saw what that A&M baseball team went through with my own two eyes at the end, where the coach leaves his guys and then walks across the street to Texas, and I, heard all the stuff that was going on and the money and everything else. It's like, if this is going on with baseball, I wonder what's going on in basketball and football. That was my epiphany to really what this must be like on the football level, when when there are not huge swaths of people that are watching baseball, college baseball, like they are football. So yeah, welcome to the reality, Chuck.
Yeah, it's the wild, wild west, and I hate it, but it is where we are right now, and hopefully it changes in the future. That's all we got for today on the Sneakers Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell enemy. Subscribe to the YouTube channels as well, News 4 and Fox SA. We will see you right back here on Monday. Actually, I won't be here. Zach will see you. Zach, you and Don will be here for Spurs Media Day coverage on Monday, so that's exciting. We'll see you then.